Hey, that's right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back. Some of you I know. It was a long trip getting here, but I got here just about. Don't look at Twitter. That was a funny night last night. It reminded me of Dublin, all that rain. So Lisbon, I hope you're going to fix that problem. Okay, so we've got an interesting morning. We're going to cover stuff that I get involved in quite a lot myself. So I'm an engineer, actually, and a marketeer. So I get into this whole, is it about data? Is it about behavior? Is it about insights? And of course, as we all know, it's about all of those things. And pretty much this morning is going to look at that great interaction between the hard facts and the soft behaviors. So typical Panda, we've got quite a lot of varying interconnected themes today. This morning, we're going to cover such heavy-duty subjects as happiness, innovation, creativity, influencing, and the black art of the influencers, and how they all connect together. So session one is going to be about happiness. We even have a comedian and serious content generator himself to open that up with us. We've got a session on the black arts of influencing, a seriously interesting panel. Then we're going to talk to 3 senior female advertising and marketing folks on the whole issue of creativity and innovation. And then we have a fantastic aperitif with Heineken, who are going to connect big data and big beer, which should be an interesting one. Now, this is, as you know, it's a marketing session, so interactivity is really important. You have Slido on your app, and if I could just call it up there, just to remind people where it is. We really do encourage you to submit questions, and that's how you do it. So any questions to a speaker, try and get it up there as soon as you can. And don't be shy. They're supposed to interact with you, so there's no such thing as a dumb question. There may be some dumb answers. And in terms of that, we're going to, during the morning, check back on a number of issues. So I'm putting up a question. Yeah, stick it up there again. I want you to consider this right now. Okay, on the Slido, when you're thinking about a successful business, let's just take a quick poll on what's most important. Now, pick 3 here. We tried a very sophisticated bit of statistical analysis this morning and realized we couldn't actually ask the question in a ranking. So actually, all you do is consider what's important: data, understanding the facts, getting happy customers, or getting happy employees, insights, going beyond the data to understand the why. Oh, look, it's happening already. Reputation, creativity, etc. Look at that. Okay, so what we're going to do, keep voting. What we're going to do is going to close that in a second, and then during the day we're going to check back and see how that's moving. Okay. So interesting. Look at that. You're a happy crowd. That's a good sign. Okay. So what we're now going to do, I'm going to close that vote, and we're going to come back to it, and we're going to go to our first panel, which is beautifully about happiness. So if I can ask onto the stage for bringing happy back, we've got Joe Lazauskas even, of Contently, asking the hard questions from Alan Schaaf, who is the CEO of Imgur. So please give a warm Panda welcome to your first happiness session.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Lazauskas, and this is Alan Schaaf, and we are super excited to be with you this morning. So, Alan, just in case anyone here has been living under a rock or just wandered into the room sort of hungover after the night summit last night, what is Imgur?
Well, Imgur is a community entertainment platform. where people share visual stories and jokes and memes and GIFs, a lot of cat pictures. And we are one of the top 20 websites in the United States. We reach over 250 million people every month. And we've been around for a while now. We've been around for about 9 years or so.
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people don't realize at first is that Imgur is almost as big in terms of active users as Twitter or Snapchat. And as the CEO of one of the real major social media success stories, can you tell me what the hell has gone wrong? Where Facebook is now a tool for hacking elections and data breaches, where Twitter feels often like this cesspool of harassment. Like, what has happened over the last 5 years or so that's brought us to this place?
Yeah, well, besides all the trolls and all the data hacking and all the privacy leaks that you just mentioned, people are finally starting to realize that these platforms are making us feel worse. They're making us feel worse about ourselves, about other people, about the state of the world. And it makes sense as to why. Because these platforms, the way they're set up, you think you're seeing your friends and your celebrities and all the notable people in the industry, but you're really not. You're really not seeing your friends or the real celebrities. You're seeing highly curated personal brands that these people are keeping up. Because people only share their highlight moments on social media. They only share the best of their lives. And so you, on the receiving end, you might be on your couch, right? And you probably just finished a bag of Doritos. And there's no way that you are ever going to feel quite as good as you think those people look. So it creates some envy, makes us feel bad about ourselves. And you just keep on scrolling, and it's these little hits of feeling bad, basically. You don't really know why, but now people are finally starting to realize, after years of this going on, that this is what's happening. And so I don't know if that necessarily leads to all the trolls and all the problems, but it's certainly, I think, kind of bad for humanity.
So what do we do, right? Like, what does a better social media experience look like if, as a lot of the research you guys have released recently says, social media is hurting us as individuals in a lot of profound ways?
So what do we do?
Yeah, what do we do?
Well, there are some sort of easy, obvious things I think that we can do, such as limiting the amount of time we spend on it, taking breaks from it. So we got back a bunch of data that we received from a third-party company called YPulse, where we commissioned a study to actually look into this. And I'll be revealing a lot of that tomorrow on the main stage for all you guys. But one of the interesting things is that people are starting to do something about it, and they are taking breaks. We see that younger people are deleting the Facebook app off their phone altogether. And so that's one thing you can do. You literally just delete them. But besides that, we see that there are platforms that do make people feel better. And those are the platforms that emphasize entertainment and discovery. Those are platforms such as Imgur, but also Netflix and YouTube, platforms where they break you outside of your friends list. You get to discover everything else that's out there, including new interests and new people, and they don't kind of lock you into these little echo chambers that may end up being a little bit cesspool-y, as you say.
And it seems like that's been the root of a lot of the problems we've seen lately from a discourse perspective, especially with politics in the US, right? With the rise of these small groups of the alt-right, of white supremacy on Twitter and Facebook, where the absolute goal of just connecting people has led to an encouragement on a lot of social platforms for an echo chamber of really negative thoughts that are bad for the world, a lot of negative groups. So I think that begs the question, can scale be the guiding mission for a social network? Can, say, Facebook's absolute mission of just connecting people be a guiding mission for a social network? Or does it have to be something else?
Yeah, so I think that's a great mission, but you need more than that. I think that these companies need values. I think they need values on what they're really trying to create here for the world, and whether or not they want certain types of discourse on their platform or not. And so the approach that we take, so Imgur, I do not call Imgur a free speech platform. We have very specific rules on what people are not allowed to do on Imgur. For example, you cannot come into Imgur and spread your racist ideals or hateful messages. You can't come on and dox people, share personal information. We don't want to hear about what you think about certain ethnic groups. Imgur is just not the place for that. We are trying to create a very positive platform. And so I say that Imgur is not a free speech platform for that. It's like, I think the right analogy is that we are throwing a party over at Imgur. And the party is in my house. And if you come into my house and you're rude to all my guests and you harass my guests, I'm going to kick you out. So we've got rules that are enforced. There's a warning system. There's a banning system. And if you go against them, oh, and by the way, these rules are plastered on the walls of our house. And you must agree to them before we even let you in. And so if you go against them, we will kick you out. And I'm not sure why other platforms don't necessarily take that approach, because I think that if you let in these very small niche, these trolls, they turn everybody else off.
Yeah, so put yourself in the shoes of Mark Zuckerberg or of Jack. Would you implement these rules? Are there other things that you would do to sort of clean up Facebook and Twitter?
So I'm not going to speak on behalf of Mark or anybody else. They are the experts on their platform, just like I'm the expert on my platform. And so that's sort of our approach, is that what we're trying to create and the values that we uphold are there around transparency, respect, and bringing value into the community. And if your post or what you're trying to say doesn't do those things, then they might be against our rules.
So let's turn to sort of the future of social media. It's a big topic of discussion throughout Web Summit. What do you see in the next 5 years? Do you imagine that the social media landscape will condense around just a few companies, or will we see increased fragmentation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think if you look at maybe what's happening with Instagram and Snapchat, we might still be in the consolidation phase a little bit. But eventually, I think people are probably starting to get sick of social media. At least that's what we saw in our data. And so I'm not sure if that means that social media has sort of reached its peak consolidation or not. But I do think one thing that's going to happen is that other entrepreneurs will find ways to innovate that these bigger companies are not looking at. I think maybe a good example is that there's probably nobody in the crowd right now that is tackling web search. I think web search is done. There's a very big, clear winner of that. But there are other companies tackling other aspects of search, such as GIF search or visual search. And so I think that if you think of these big social media companies as sort of knights in their suits of armor, I think other entrepreneurs will find chinks in their armor and go after specific use cases that will then open up new markets, which will then be fragmented, which will then maybe, of course, consolidate over time. But that's probably the stage that I think we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the counter argument to that would be, if you look at what happened to Snapchat over the last couple of years, where Facebook owned Instagram, basically copied all of their core features, and took a big bite out of their market share. Do you not think that would happen with any challenger that comes to threaten any of the major social networks?
Oh, of course it will. That's competition. So then going back to GIF search, that became extremely fragmented, and now that's starting to consolidate. And Google, I think just this year, bought the company Tenor, and so now we're seeing some consolidation in that phase. And so not only would a big company then try to enter the space of maybe a startup, they might just straight up acquire that startup because they're interested in what they're doing. But that's when the consolidation actually starts.
And how do you think about your place in this space? Do you imagine Imgur staying essentially the way it is now as a big open platform? Do you imagine a future where, say, people could create more individual profiles where you could have user-to-user connection like you do on a lot of other social networks? Do you see any evolution like that coming for you?
Any evolution of user-to-user connection?
Yeah, of just changing any parts of the platform fundamentally, say, to spike greater user growth.
Yeah, so there's one interesting thing is that I think connecting with people now on the internet that's just table stakes of the internet. Everybody expects that platforms let you connect people now. What I think is interesting is platforms that let you disconnect, platforms that let you discover new things, platforms that let you recharge, platforms that entertain you outside of just more connection with your high school friends, your college friends. Personally, I don't think that there's much more innovation left in that space. I'm much more interested in the disconnection, so to speak, and the entertainment value.
And how do you get people then to make that conscious decision to move from the quick dopamine and envy hits that you get going through your Instagram feed to what, at least according to your research, says is a more wholesome and positive social media experience?
How do we get there?
How do you get people to make that switch?
Well, people are already making that switch now. We see that people are, like I said earlier, kind of deleting the Facebook app directly from their phone. And so, this phenomenon has been happening for a while. It's now actually starting to reach pop culture. There have been movies written about how social media makes people feel bad. There are TV episodes written about it. Celebrities, of course, tweeting about it. And so now I think we're entering the phase where people are starting to do something. And what they're doing is they're spending more time on other areas or on other platforms. Something else that's interesting that we saw in the data is that people largely regard social media as a wasteful use of time, right? To the surprise of no one, social media is sort of regarded as a waste of time. However, platforms that emphasize entertainment, recharging, those are more regarded as a better use of time.
But isn't there still a big gap between people's perception of how they're spending their time versus their actual behavior?
Well, that might be as well, because social media, it is addicting. And there are thousands of designers and experts behind every one of these companies that are researching ways for you to become more addicted. And so regardless of how you want to spend your time, people are probably realistically spending a lot of time on these platforms, even if they don't want to, because people have found ways to hook into human behavior to get you to use it even more.
And I know we don't want to give away too much of what you have to present tomorrow on the big stage, but in the research that you did around how people respond to social media, what was the most surprising stat that came out of that?
Honestly, I do think one of the most surprising stats is that there are platforms that make you feel better. And when you look at social media as a whole, the platforms that focus on entertainment do make you feel better, as opposed to just social interaction or connection.
And how does that influence the way that you see the future of your company?
Oh, well, it's great for Imgur because that's kind of what we do. Our vision is to lift the world's spirits for a few moments every day, right? We want people to take these quick breaks or moments and enjoy them and recharge and have laughs and kind of get sucked into the flow of seeing one funny thing after another funny thing after another funny thing. And you lift your head up and oh, you missed your next panel that you're going to go to or something like that. And so that's where we're trying to take social media. We're trying to get it to be more positive. We're trying to bring a lot of that back. And when you think back to the internet's early days, like I remember everybody loving the internet. I remember like surfing GeoCities sites and hanging out in AOL chat rooms. And I remember like the internet being this exciting thing that just was so full of promise. And now unfortunately, we are here talking about how the internet is making people feel worse. And so I'm trying to bring us back and get the internet to be more positive again.
So there are so many people here as I go around Web Summit who are either tech founders or they're marketers or they're advertisers who are trying to figure out what their social media strategy should be, right? How they can break through to people, how they can use it to build stronger relationships with potential customers and audiences at large. What advice would you have for them in terms of how they should approach social media?
So when it comes to approaching social media, the thing that I've seen that works best is to be very authentic. Is to be authentic and transparent. And if you go onto a platform and you're very blatantly trying to sell your brand, you're not bringing value to the community, I don't think that's going to be very successful. And so that's personally where we've seen success in it. That's where companies that use sort of Imgur have seen success in it, is if you really, as a brand, if you're trying to bring value to your customer and bring value to the people that are even just receiving your messaging, then I think that whatever social media strategy you base around that key value of bringing value will be more successul.
Fantastic. And we're just about out of time, but I do want to encourage everyone here to come see your talk tomorrow. I know it's on my schedule and something that I'm super excited about. When is it and where is it?
Oh, it's 2 p.m. tomorrow on the main stage, on the center stage.
Fantastic. Well, Alan, thank you, and thank you to everyone for coming out.
Thank you.